I'm excited to talk about this topic with you today. This is an interesting one. It's not an easy one in some ways because I think it's a sensitive topic when it comes to our health. Would you agree that sometimes it feels very visible and personal? Like we can feel self-conscious about our health in terms of our conditions that we may have and our weight, things that we struggle with or we are concerned about. And so we feel a sense of maybe if we're not careful, we could be shame involved. There could be, um, and also we have to get rid of some of these old relics of ideas that all my health would be just perfect if I did everything just right, and that is certainly not true, right? Sometimes things just happen to most people who live in the best healthy lifestyle. So as we dive into this, I love to hear from you. I've got my chat um, right in front of me so I can see that too. And with this many people, it might be a little bit difficult to have too much actual conversation. But if someone has something they really want to say, I love to talk with you and hear your opinions. So you can do that as well. But as Heather said, we'll just make sure when you do, then you kind of mute yourself after. So let's dive in. Let's talk about this. And we titled this reason for this way for a reason, making the decision to change your health. So we're not just going to talk about the challenges of our health, but how do we decide? Like, I hope by the end of this, we've given you more than just a picture of what the issues are, but we've helped equip you with what you need to make that happen. Stephen Aldona, if you read, he wrote a lot of books about healthy lifestyle and had this to say to help set the tone for how important this topic is. A healthy lifestyle can do more to improve your health than any other single medical breakthrough in the past 100 years. And I've given that a lot of thought. I think that was 20 years ago. And I think it's only more true now, right? That we see that of all the things that have happened in the last 100, think about 100 years, right? I mean, penicillin and modern medicine, so many things that we've done, but that still it's within our lifestyle that can be more important than any of those things, is what Stephen suggests, and that maybe we'll give that some more thought. So again, what I hope to accomplish is to understand kind of what's at play because we don't really make a decision unless we recognize. So we're kind of going to scare you a little bit into, and I hope it doesn't really come across that way. But we're going to address what's really at stake here, right? What are the risks and benefits? That's even more important, I think, associated with healthy eating and exercise. And then we're going to target what those roadblocks are because a lot of what I'm going to say in that regard might be like, duh, I already knew that. Like, oh, you're going to tell me that like pounding 3 Big Macs a day is not good for me. Okay, I've done that for a long time, but I can't stop it. I love the sauce, right? So we're going to talk about how do we address what do we do about that, right? And then find out what strategies work best for you. And if there's anything I've learned about healthy lifestyle, it's the same as mental health. It's just crossover. Is that we're all different, and what works for you and works for me can be a little bit different. And so we're going to talk about some strategies and see what and help you discover what's going to be best for you. You're going to see me use this term called successful aging because that's really the goal, right? uh, you know, when you have a birthday, sometimes when you get older like me, you're like, oh no, another birthday. But you know what that means? I stayed alive another year, right? Getting older is success. But there's a difference between just getting older and successful aging, right? So we're going to talk about like what does it look like to successfully age? Um, we are getting older, right? Baby boomers have hit the retirement age, well into it now. And they're called baby boomers for a reason. There's a lot of companies that are being born in the baby boomers, right? We know that it started with like the Gerber babies. That's where Gerber was born. The Mustang came around when they all turned 16, right? We see right now, I suppose the RV places are doing pretty well, right? There's different companies kind of exploded as the baby boomers hit different phases in their lives. The CDC, you've heard of them before. If you didn't know who they were until 5 years ago, you do know now, right? They're very much the Center of Disease Control, very much over health related issues in a lot of ways. They reported life expectancy of around 77.9. That's plateaued. In my life, I remember every year they're kind of, it's getting a little bit longer, getting a little bit longer. But now we've kind of plateaued around 78 years. Um, and we're going to talk about what we're living longer than than we used to. And that might make you think about what Stephen Aldona said. Say, well, is that true? Because I don't know if 100 years ago people were living to 78, right? So then the question becomes, what do we mean by successful aging? Living longer or living well longer? And that's the question. In the entire history of the world, half of the human beings who've ever lived to the age of 65 are alive today. You think about that. This world's been around for a long time. But if you count all the people who made it to what we now call early retirement, used to be considered just retirement, but now early retirement, half of them, that tells you that, well, as Laura said, yeah, but like in the Bible, they on 800 plus years. True. I guess there just weren't as many. And then I kind of wonder what happened, Laura. Yeah, because they made it, they should probably be giving this presentation because apparently they lived 800 plus years and we're happy to live 78 now. What happened along the way? I don't know. Normal versus successful aging. So here's what we're going to say about successful aging. The normal aging process can be to grow weaker. That's natural. Like that's not your fault. We're going to grow weaker naturally. We become less healthy, giving up more every year. That is this the if you study science, it's a lot of entropy, right? Things just break down, and that's the normal thing. However, plenty of studies have shown that we can actually overcome and in many ways slow down or even um, to make increases. So, for example, if you decide now as you're aging, I want to be stronger next year, you can be stronger than you were last year, right? Maybe harder than it was when you were 25, right? And take more work and all those things, but we can do that. And that's true for our brains too. We can grow new brain cells well into late adulthood. And yes, Stephanie, we can do that for you. We can send Heather, I think answered your question about the PowerPoint, but we can make sure you get a copy of that. Chronic disease. Okay, so what causes that? What are the issues that go against successful aging? The biggest one in the room, which causes the most problems, is chronic disease. Right, the ones that last for many years, that are persistent and eventually lead to death. Let's take a look at chronic disease. 7 out of 10 deaths include those chronic diseases. Heart disease, cancer, stroke, arthritis, Alzheimer's, and diabetes are the most prevalent ones, and 70% of us will die of one of those things. Okay. By the way, if I were to tell you as you look at that list, I'm going to go back to that many of these things are preventable. And you think, is cancer preventable? Arthritis, diabetes, like in what ways are they preventable? And in what ways are they something that could come from unhealthy living? And what ways are they not preventable? Because it's a little bit of both. So we're going to look at that. And on a study on avoidable chronic disease showed that diabetes is 91% avoidable, probably taking a lot of the type 2, right? My dad had this, and if he was living healthy and eating right, he was doing pretty well. As you know, type 1, you can't do anything about that. You could be 10 years old and eating broccoli every day, just like your mom asked you to, and then you get type 1 diabetes and you have to get the shots, and that's what the rest of that is. Heart disease. I think most of us probably appreciate that heart disease is largely not, all 100%. I knew a marathon runner, that was doing great and then eating healthy and everything. And then in their 30s had a heart attack, right? So it can happen. That's why it's 82% and not 100%. Strokes and cancer. Cancer is the one that I think surprises a lot of people. Like, really? Cancer, right? Like, you can prevent cancer with healthy living, yes. And they aren't always clear. The ones that are obvious are like, okay, lung cancer, skin cancer, right? We know those are behavioral related, like how much sun you put in your face and how much you smoke. Not, it's not 1 to 1. Like some people barely suntan a little bit, and next thing you know, they have skin cancer because their genes are just kind of active. Other people seem to like fry themselves and do fine. So it's not like that easy to predict, but there's certainly behaviors that cause that. But even other cancers, the ones that we don't think of as behavioral related, like just all the others, there's a lot of studies that show that what you are, what you eat, and how you behave in your life does seem to have an influence on those things. Number one killer of Americans is still cardiovascular, heart attack, right? 50, over half Americans ultimately die of this. And you look at all those other statistics that are in front of you. We know this is the number one killer of people. That should probably not surprise a lot of people. But if you factor people under the age of 85, Now, if you say everyone over 85, let's not count how they die, cancer is the number one killer. So in that way, I think it's kind of the number one killer because I'm telling you, if I make it to 85, I'm starting to feel pretty good about how long I lived, right? And at that point, if I die of a heart attack in my 90s, I'm feeling like, oh, my heart's kind of done, right? um, and so if we're saying, you want to make it to 85, I'm not saying you don't want to live past that, but if the number one killer of people under 85 is cancer, so that's scary. And I just feel like I mean, I just remember I was a kid, maybe just sheltered in my own brain, but I thought cancer was just for the unfortunate few, right? But it's certainly not. It's now I'm older and my dad died of it. My father-in-law died of it. I've had a ton of it in my family. So I know that it's out there. 40% of Americans will be diagnosed with some type of cancer in their lifetime. Am I depressing all of you yet with all of this? Hopefully, we'll kind of get past the depressing part. 70% of that can be preventable. Okay. So now we're going to talk about what is a health related lifestyle? What can we do to actually try to turn back the tide and give ourselves? This is the way I want you to think of it. I'm not going to offer you any guarantees. I'm not going to tell you that if you eat right and exercise well and live the lifestyle that we're talking about here, you're going to be okay. It's going to be perfect for you. I'm just saying you're going to load the dice in your favor. You still may roll six ones when you roll them, right? And get under the threshold. But you're loading the dice in your favor when you do. The more you do, that's positive. And that's really all we can do to give ourselves the best chance at a healthy lifestyle. So, of course, what does that involve? Well, it's what you put in your body, right? That's obvious. What you drink, what you eat, how much of what you drink, and certain things, and what you eat, and the amount of exercise you get, and whether or not you're putting other things in your body. We put tobacco, but of course, drugs would be in that as well, and alcohol. Compared to 1971, and I'm going to tell you this data I'm showing you is a little outdated. I'm going to bet this was early 2000s, and I couldn't find the statistic right now. Maybe we started ignoring this statistic, but we just started eating more than we did in 1971. We find that even today, with all of the work against smoking, that still 25% of people smoke. 1 out of 3 has high blood pressure, 1 out of 3 has high cholesterol, 2 out of 3 are overweight or obese, 3 out of 4 fail to get enough exercise, and 4 out of 5. That 2 out of 3 overweight or obese is actually outdated. It's probably more like 3 out of 4 if you include overweight and not just obese. To show you that, I'm gonna take you on a little ride with me, okay, guys? You're gonna take that bitter pill with me to watch what we've been doing for the last 40 years. 40 years, yes, almost exactly 40 years, almost. I said exactly almost 40 years, almost. That's very good English. But what I'm going to show you is a quick slide-by-slide view of what's happened. So this first slide you're going to see is that in 1985, the CDC started tracking through the states their obesity rate. Okay. Now I want to be clear, we're not talking about vanity pounds, okay, like that. I want to look good in my swimsuit stuff. We're talking about what they determine is that the point of obesity is when your organs start to become compromised and you're more at risk of persistent chronic illness and death, right? Like that's why this American Medical Association came up with that designation, because all of that said, now it's not vanity, it's health related. Okay, so obesity, and you can see here we are. You maybe wherever you are, where you stood, you can see all the white. That meant they weren't even paying attention. In 1985, I was like, we're fine. So you only see a few states tracking it, but the very highest state, which is a couple in the South, right? You see Alabama, you see just a few other states there that like we're tracking this. You see Georgia, you see Kentucky, you see some of these states that were tracking this, and the highest rated states were 10 to 14% of their population was medically obese. Okay, remember that number. 10 to 14 was the highest. Now go on this journey with me, 1986, and watch as the colors start to fill in. Remember the dark blue? Only a few states were there. We got more and more and more. And now it's more than half of the states are that way. Utah's still hanging out less than 10%. That's where I live. Okay. We had a new category in 1991. 6 years later, because some states started having 15 and 19% of their population was medically over obese. Uh, Now remember that category of less than 10% that was the predominant number is gone. Just 8 years later, what was the majority now longer is actually not even, and maybe a couple small states in there that weren't even, they're all way above that. So, Wyoming's still like, we don't care, right? They're still not tracking it. And then you see this going on 1994, 95, 96, 97. We had a new category in 97 for over 20%. 98. This is a year at a time, not going by decades. This is 1 year at a time. Like how much, boy, McDonald's was doing pretty well, weren't they? Uh, 2000, 2001, we had a new category for over 25%. 2002, 2003, and now that highest category of 10 to 14% we had before is gone. So lowest category is gone. The lowest, remember 1985, the highest category is gone. And now we just have the lowest states are worse than the best states were doing in just 15 to 20 years earlier. We had that over 25% category. And then we quickly, the next year, had to add over 30% category. And we just keep going. Colorado, good for them, man. They're just, I guess they have lots of skiing that helps out. But okay, over 30%. Now they changed they shifted gears here in 2011. They changed the colors on us here, which thanks a lot for that. But now you got to readjust a little bit here. So what we saw here was the highest number of over 30% was the biggest category. You can see now quickly that they started tracking even. They had an over 30% number. They didn't tell you breakdowns above that. So now they added new categories to show you how many. And you can see, by the way, that those higher categories, you don't really see them yet. You see now that the darker orange is 30 to 35%, which is kind of where we left off. And now you add a new category for 40 to 45%. So we're now saying that some states have almost half of their population is medically obese. And then we just keep going and we keep going. We get 2019, good old Colorado. They always do a little bit better. They're at 20 to 25%. And here we go. We're on to 2011, 20, 21, 22. Look at that. 1 year. What a shame. 23. And we have states that are the best state, Colorado, is 20 to 25%. The best state, the worst state 40 years ago was 10 to 14%. And you have states that are around half of their population. So what does this mean, right? What we see is that very quickly, this is a very quick jump in our health year by year. Steve Aldona in 2005, so a long time ago, had this to say about this, said, I can summarize all this learning in 2 sentences. Most of the chronic disease and deaths in the westernized societies are not caused by genetics or some act of God, or the things I will add that were to keep us up at night about terrorism and all the things we worry about. You can add to the list. The biggest, scariest killers that are coming after us is our own behavior when it comes to how we live our lives. Okay. Have I rocked you a little bit? Why do we do this? Why do we fail? Why is we know you guys knew I may have painted a picture just to make it a little more depressing, but why is this so hard now? And I'm catching up on some of your comments here. Curious about what happened in the 80s. One person said, I want to talk about that too. And I want to ask you, maybe throw in the comment. Jamie said processed food and adding things to help preserve it to make the product thing is in my way. I think it says produce. It's covered. That hurt us. It's true. Yeah, our foods are processed differently. We've taken shortcuts. It's just, man, I'm 52. Okay. I'm going to go a little nostalgic on you here. I remember when I was a kid, and even going to Arctic Circle or McDonald's was kind of a treat. Like it was something we did once in a while. And now it's like the main thing you do. And once in a while you eat the other way, which is to prepare your foods, right? It's we cooked more, and our foods that we cooked were probably grown better, maybe, right? So we definitely have seen that happen, that fast food and restaurant it plays a big role in that. We supersize, especially here in the United States, right? What else do you think may have contributed to that? I've got a couple more comments here. someone again saying how foods are being processed, that there's no doubt. I don't think anybody can deny that. I don't think even the anybody's denying that the way we process foods certainly has a role in that. So now you have to really seek those kind of foods that don't do that. The stress of life and job can cause your body to weaken immune system and retain fats. Yes, Katie said that down. Stress, the cortisol helps store fat, right? So when we're stressed, it actually makes us it goes against our ability and it just weakens our immune system. Of course, we're not just talking about obesity now, we're talking about all the other health effects that come from that, right? High caloric food is cheap, right? It used to cost a lot to get to eat enough to overeat. Now it's like, gosh, I could overdo my calorie intake for the entire day. I don't want to pick on McDonald's here, but I'm going to for like $4 on their dollar menu, right? I can spend $4 and go over my caloric intake for the day, right? That's how cheap that could be. And by the way, it's can't do that. You can't have a healthy diet for $4, probably, right? So we're sedentary, as someone kind of put there. We are definitely more sedentary than our parents were. We don't walk. We don't. We stay at home. We sit on our phones. We feel again, as someone put, we don't have the energy after we're mentally exhausted, so we don't physically do things, right? So we've painted the picture here. So here's other reasons. I'm going to outline some of them for you. One is we get contradictory and confusing information. Um, eggs, right? No one wants to talk about eggs right now because the price of eggs, but eggs, like good or bad for you, right? We've heard different conflicting information about dairy products and some different things that are out there. And carbs, like, oh, are they bad? Are they good? Right? We hear different. Fat is one of them. I remember when like fat was bad, like it's a bad word, and we didn't want to eat fat. Now, like, oh, actually, certain fats are really good for you, and you should make sure you get plenty of them. And so it's like it's difficult to keep track of some of that. We fall off the wagon, and this is certainly what I've struggled with. Can I just get real with you guys for a minute and tell you this has been a not easy journey for me? I am a master at losing weight. I've done it. I've lost over 30 pounds 4 or 5 times now. I'm on that roller coaster. And so I can tell you everything you want to know about losing weight. Keeping it off has been not as easy for me, right? So I get that this reason and falling off the bandwagon. 30%, the Gold's Gym study showed that, if you set a goal to go to the gym, 30% are done by February, 80% are done by July, right? So it's hard to stay with those habits. And jokingly, how many of you have helped somebody move and felt like, by the feeling I'm getting from the dust on this, used to be like the Stairmaster or the elliptical or whatever. I think this is the only exercise anybody's getting from this is lifting it to the next house, right? And we look at our own equipment and we might say that. What else doesn't work is that some of the strategies we use they don't work, right? 95% of dieters not only go back to where they were, but they gain more weight because what they just did is put their body in a starvation diet. And all of a sudden now they just sail past where they even were before because their body's trying to recover. So again, I want to show you a little video here on the importance of an intervention. We're going to start to shift into some things that I think will help us take a look at and overcome this issue. So, and somebody tell me if you can't hear this. I think you should be able to hear it.
Hi, I'm Dr. Mike Evans, and I'm presenting this visual lecture called 23 and a half hours in partnership with 24-Hour Fitness. It's great to be working with people who have a passion for helping others achieve their individual fitness goals and promoting positive change in their lives. So, I have a big interest in preventive medicine, which can mean a lot of things from, cancer screening to eating more fiber to having a good social network. And I mean that in the old sense of the word. Weighing less, drinking less, smoking less, controlling your blood pressure, cholesterol, and so on and so forth. So all of these things are incredibly important, and I wouldn't want you to minimize your efforts in any one category. But I want to know what comes first. What has the biggest impact? What has the biggest return on investment? What makes the biggest difference to your health? So I did my research, and I found an answer, at least for me, and it's tricky because all these things are sort of overlapping. But I picked out this intervention, and because of its breadth. It worked for so many different health problems, and that's what I found so cool about it. So just to kind of walk you through a quick list. So this intervention in patients with knee arthritis who receive 1 hour of treatment 3 times a week reduced their rates of pain and disability by 47%. In older patients, it reduced progression to dementia and Alzheimer's by around 50%. For patients at high risk of diabetes and coupled with other lifestyle interventions, it reduced progression to frank diabetes by 58%. Following over 10,000 Harvard alumni for over 12 years, those that had the intervention had a 23% lower risk of death than those who didn't get the treatment. It's the number one treatment of fatigue. And of course, the kind of outcome of choice there, my favorite outcome is quality of life, which is really all of the above and really about making your life better. And this treatment has been shown over and over again to improve quality of life. So the question is, what's the medicine and what is 23 and a half hours? So the medicine was exercise, mostly walking, so not triathlons. And let me just put it a different way. I think what I'm um, asking you to do is if you think about your typical day, so there's 24 hours. And so you might spend most of your day, this varies obviously, but, couch surfing, sitting at work, obviously sleeping. And what the evidence that I'm going to show you kind of tells me is the best thing you can do for your health is to spend half an hour being active, maybe an hour. And that if you can do that, you can realize all the benefits I've described in the previous slides. So if exercise is a medicine, what's a dose? So when I think of dose, I think of how long, how often, and how intense. I'm going to give you a slightly mixed message, but essentially more activity is better. But I must say the rate of return seems to decline after 20 or 30 minutes a day. So if you're being active less than 150 minutes a week, or more if you're a kid, an hour a day if you're a kid, my flag goes up in the clinic. So my personal take on this is that the literature draws a very broad brush, and so we see big differences when somebody goes from not doing anything to doing something, and after that the return is more granular. So if we took the Nurses Health Study, women who went from zero activity to just 1 hour a week reduced their heart disease rates by almost half. So you can break it down. So it can be 10 minutes, 10 minutes, 10 minutes if you want to do 30 minutes of exercise. So it can be broken into 3. If you're only going to do it if it's pre-booked with friends, I have couples that take a half-hour walk every morning or evening to organize their life. A dog is a great walking coach. The data is showing 67% of dog walkers achieve the 150 minutes a week just with the dog walking. And finally, of course, your commute, getting off stop early, taking the stairs, and so on and so forth. The next way to think about it is the reverse. So what I call sitting disease. We know that being sedentary is bad for your health, but a researcher named Leonard Veerman wanted to quantify this, and he did so down in Australia in a big study they did there. They found, compared with persons who watch no TV, those that spend a lifetime average of 6 hours a day watching TV can expect to live about 5 years left. I mean, that's incredible. But then I think, oh, who watches 6 hours of TV? And it turns out the average adult in the USA spends about 5 hours a day watching TV or screens. So I find this fascinating that we never think of the TV as something that's bad for our health, but clearly it's as powerful as many other risk factors for chronic disease. So I'm going to finish by asking you a question. And this may have some personal challenges for you. So, you might be very busy with work or kids or both, and you may be in pain or have other priorities. But my question to you is, can you limit your sitting and sleeping to just 23 and a half hours a day? So whether it's hitting the gym and attaining fitness goals or walking a dog or taking the stairs, get out there and be active. Thanks again to 24 Hour Fitness for bringing you this message.
What do you think? When I hear him post it that way, it kind of hits you in the gut. Like, can you limit your sedentary, less healthy behaviors to 23 and a half hours? Just give a half an hour a day. As he said, we're not talking about running marathons or doing anything extreme, just moving our bodies. It used to just be obviously taken for granted. You had to. And some of you might have jobs that's still your case. Maybe you have jobs where you have to do a ton of walking exercise like that. But so just movement. And I will say the other part of that is the mental part. For me, this is the kingpin when it comes to my health. It's not because I exercise so much that I can eat whatever I want. That's what the John Travolta diet was. He used to say, hey, how do you stay fit? He's like, I whatever I want and exercise 4 hours a day. I'm like, I can't do that. So I find it's not that it allows me to eat whatever I want. It's that it's a mental for me, if I go to the gym, if I whatever exercise I do, it seems to put me in the state of mind that I'm better at the rest of it. It's more mental than almost anything else. It's like I'm just in a better state of mind. Now, that may not be the answer for you. Some people don't feel that way. The key here, as we're gonna go along here, is to find what's going to work for you. It's a self-discovery. Why do people fail to keep exercising? They hit a low point in their moods. It's hard to do this. That thing he just said is like, yeah, you might make it simple, but it's not for me, right? Like the harder, the more you're struggling with depression or other things, the more difficult that can be, right? They lose confidence. They don't see instant results. We are very much a microwave society. We want instant results. And because you don't see them, we can give up on them, right? You're going to hear me talk more about this piece, but a little bit what happens with exercise and everything else is there's a little bit, and this is going to sound weird, of peer pressure to not succeed in this because we don't like to feel bad about our, so like if you're doing it, then I feel bad about me. And you can almost feel like people are unsupportive, that, hey, all of a sudden I just announced I'm going on a diet. Why is there junk food all over the counter all of a sudden, right? No one's purposely trying to sabotage you, but it can feel like you're not getting the support you need. And you feel like you're going it alone. You feel like it's just too hard. Like that's maybe one of the biggest reasons. Like it's just some people don't really like the feeling of that, and you have to find that for me. I'm going to tell you, I don't love running. I've heard of the runner's high. I've had it before. It's not worth it to me. I just don't love running. It's too monotonous. It's just lame. I'm sorry for you runners. It's boring to me. Even if it's outside, I hate it. I don't hate it. I don't hate it. That's strong. I don't love it. It's not enough and exciting fun for me to keep doing it. I love that you do, and I love that some people that's their lifestyle and they're healthy, and I love it for them. Doesn't work for me. I do other things that I find to be more. I like high intensity interval training, which is just like go hard, slow down, go hard. I like variable stuff. I like strength training. I read a lot about how, particularly what I've read about for men's health, how important it is for testosterone, which you're not going to hear me talk much about, but for you men, testosterone is a crisis right now because of foods and lifestyle. We are seeing record low testosterone for guys in their 20s, not just talking about older guys. Testosterone is plummeting, and it's not just important for your sexual health, it's important for your energy, for your sleep, for your bones, for everything, your mental health. So that's to me why I choose strength training, because it helps to overcome that issue. Okay, so nutritional lifestyle. Again, too much effort. We already covered this, right? McDonald's is easy. It's hard to eat healthy. I like the taste of bad foods. This is the top of the list for you. It is for me. Man, all the stuff that's healthy for me. Why is my body built this way? I finally got an answer to this. Maybe you guys already knew this, but I'm like, if eating broccoli sustains life and eating donuts takes it away, what in our evolution or happened that made my body this way? Like, why doesn't it want that stuff? And the way it was put to me is our body only thinks of today. Like, that's all it's capable of. Like, our body doesn't have a forward thinking. So your body loves sugar because you know what sugar does? It instantly gives you energy. Broccoli, protein doesn't give you any instant effect that can measure up to what sugar can do, right? So when sugar was in low supply, if you could find it, that was life. It meant you were going to have enough energy to find the protein. Let's put it that way, right? You gave you the energy to go get the protein to live longer. It played a role. Now that sugar's in abundance and all the unhealthy stuff, it doesn't work as well for us because now we're living in a day-to-day approach, right? Eating healthy is too expensive. We talked about that. It's too complicated to eat right. Keeps track of what's good for me. And you're just like, screw it. I don't care. Give me that donut back, right? And I kind of touched on this, but I do feel like we've hit a tipping point. Tell me if you, and maybe some of you would disagree, and that's fine, but it's been my observation. And I think there's some research to back this, that we all know there was a negativity around body imaging in the same period of time, the 70s, 80s, the social pressure to be thin and look a certain way and be healthy in certain ways. It wasn't healthy. It wasn't good. Like we were asking people to look like Barbie, right? Like that wasn't probably good for us. But now we've gone away from that almost to the opposite extreme, where it's like if you're at a gathering and you're eating healthy, you're kind of the loser, right? You're kind of ruining the vibe for everybody else. Like, no, thanks. One pizza is enough for me, or I'm not going to do the pizza. I'm going to eat my kale over here, or whatever it might be, right? And now everyone's looking at you like, what's wrong with this guy? Like, come on, get on board with us. It can feel like peer pressure has gone the other way, right? Instead of feeling peer pressure, social pressure to be thin, now we're like feeling like, oh, I'm supposed to eat along with everybody else. So, and the other thing that I think has happened is that we've conflated self-love, and I'm going to tell you what I mean by that. Okay. And I'm going to come back to this question, striking the right balance. Here's where I think we got a little confused. I say we, I don't know, maybe all of us hopefully didn't do this. We rejected, as we should, this thing that we might be guilty of. And some of us still do. And I want to talk to you if that's you. Some of you, and I think collectively, we used to kind of say, I need to be healthy, thin, look a certain way, be a certain way, so that I can love myself, right? Like, and you maybe still do this in other aspects of your life. Like, I need to be successful at my job or in my relationship so that I can see myself as a good person, so that I can love myself. We had a so that mentality. I'm going to behave a certain way so that I'm acceptable. There's two problems with that. One is our inner teenager rebels against so that. It's like parents saying to your child, if you behave right, I will love you. And the child rebels because internally they say, I need you to love me as I am, not as somebody that you want me to be. We all have it inside of us to rebel, as we should, against conditional love, right? So if we give ourselves conditional love, that's a so that mentality. But if we reverse that and instead first love ourselves as we are and genuinely just be accepting of who I am today, whatever that is, whatever stuff's going on with me physically, mentally, emotionally, I'm okay with who I am. And I love this machine I've been given as my body. And I love the gifts I have. I've got a lot to work on, but none of that is any way related to my regard for myself. I have unconditional regard for me. And because of that, because I value myself as a person and my body and all of that, I feel like I want to take care of it. I feel like I want to live longer. It's worth it. I feel like I want to be healthier. I want to bend over and feel good about picking up what I picked over and not go, oh, that hurt, right? I want to run with my grandkids. That's a big motivation for me, right? So maybe when we take a because mentality, we don't have that inner rebellion, and we can live by positive motivation instead of negative. And we're going to come back to that piece. But I wanted to sprinkle that in here because I think that's really important. So how do we change? Like what needs to happen? And I've asked myself this question many times. I've said to myself, why is it that sometimes I seem to have it and it goes a little easier and I can push through? I'm like, I've got this, I've got this. Other times I might as well be walking uphill with the piano, like in the snow, the way my dad apparently walked to school every day, the way he tells it, right? So what is it that gets me into that mindset? And it turns out I wish the answer was like, I got it for you. It's one easy thing. It's not. It's simple, lots of things, but it does come first with a decision, right? And I'm going to sound a lot like a motivational speaker right now, like Tony Robbins up here, but I'm going to tell you that you can do that right now. You can decide right now that, contrary to all of your excuses and all the reasons that you failed before and the reasons that are going to be difficult, is to say, I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it. And then that first decision will lead to more decisions, because it's not one decision, it's a lot of decisions. But the first one is to decide to do it, right? In order to do that, sometimes we have to get motivated. So we look at the advantages and disadvantages. We have to find our purpose, our why. And for me, I mentioned it's running with my grandkids. It's being able to feel good in my clothes. It's to put them on and feel like they feel right. I can move. I feel lighter when I walk. I know my feet don't hurt. I have small feet so they hurt, when I walk on. It's finding those reasons. Okay. And that's what those reasons need to be are important. Let me give you a little story here. Okay. I'm going to give you a scenario. I want you to all imagine with me the scenario I believe you've probably had a version of. Tell me if this has happened to you. You're driving home from work or wherever it is you're gone that day. And there they are. There they are. On the side of the road is that person. And at first you hate them because they are jogging or they're biking and they're doing it right, right? So you'll have that same instant reaction of like, dang you, right? Like, why are you doing it right? And then quickly you look at yourself and you're like, oh, what am I doing here? Like, I hate myself. I'm not doing that. That person's healthy. They're doing it right. What's wrong with me, right? And I beat myself up over it. So then I say, okay, that's it. I'm gonna fix this. And the next day I get up and I go running. I go jog. I try to look just like that guy to recreate his moment. And I'm jogging on the side of the road. I told you I hate running, so I better find something else to do. I'm doing it. And then that day, my reward is what? I get to erase the guilt and shame and fear. Okay. Guilt, shame, fear. I got rid of them. I extinguished them because now I can say all those feelings I had about myself, guilt, fear, shame, are gone. But that's good, right? But here's the problem, that only gets me back to zero. Because if I'm at zero, which is the absence of positive or negative, I'm at zero, and then I went into a negative when I beat myself up. If I do all those things, I got back to zero. But I'm telling you, that's not enough, which is why we fail over and over again. Removal of guilt, fear, and shame is never enough to create sustainable habits to be better. So here's the new recipe. I see that guy on the side of the road. Yes, a moment of dang you, Darren. And then I got to do something else. I got to go from coercive motivation, which is trying to beat myself up into it, into constructive motivation, which is, oh, I didn't, do I have it here? Constructive motivation is when I say, okay, so right, I want to feel better, but what else? Right? Like, I want to get rid of my guilt and shame and fear, but what else? Why do I want to do this? And I've told you some of my reasons. And I get into those. So when I go running, I'm reminded I feel better. I feel the endorphins flow in. I like how it feels. I feel good about my future. I have now gone from zero to plus. And so instead of just beating myself into submission with my goals, I am creating positive reasons to do them. Okay. So we do this by how we talk to ourselves. So a big part of your strategy is the way you coach yourself. You'll never be enough, and that never be enough to be coached by others, because you have to internalize those messages and become the coach yourself. To have your shoulder angel, positive shoulder angel, argue with your negative soldier angel every time you kind of get negative about it. So we try to get into these avoid these kind of strategies, right? Fear of forever strategy, like I'm never going to be able to do this forever. Like, how do people live this way, right? Like, oh, I'm failing at this, I'm not enough. These ways that we talk to ourselves, the avoidance strategy, the have to strategy, it's just not sustainable. There's a reason your cars are not driving on spark. Spark starts the engine, but fuel keeps it running, right? Or but some kind of fuel. So that the fuel has to be something positive that drives you to keep coming back for more, right? A couple books, if you're interested in the power of habit and how it relates to this, are one's called The Power of Habit. It's a more straightforward, simple, very anecdotal, interesting, cool book on how, and I'm going to present a couple concepts from that book on building habits. The other one, it's a little more philosophical, but I love it. It's a deep dive into like even the physics and the quantum physics of how we can just change ourselves from the inside. It's called Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself by Joe Dispenza. Highly recommend that book. Great one. So let's talk about that. In the book Power of Habit, there's Eugene. Maybe you may have read this book. Eugene's a real person. This isn't a real picture of Eugene, but this is how I imagine Gene looks from how he was described. And Eugene had an interesting uh, viral encephalitis condition. And this is not totally uncommon. Others have had it, but it uniquely challenged him in that it did severe damage to his hippocampus, but almost nowhere else. So it only seemed to affect this part of his brain, right? It did a few others affect, but what happened was his memory and decision making were harmed to the point where you could ask Eugene in his front room, "Where's your kitchen?" And he would say, "I don't know. Like, I don't know. It's his house," and he didn't know where the kitchen was. But if you said, "Eugene, I'm hungry. Let's go get a sandwich," he could get up with you and go and guide you to the kitchen to go get a sandwich. Sounds weird, right? Like, Gene, you know where the kitchen is. You went there to eat. Why couldn't you tell me that when we have this assumption about how our brains operate? But it turns out that the part of our brain that creates memories and decisions and content like that, that has recall, like in like collective, like on-demand recall, is in a totally different place than the part of our brains that just act out behavior habits. If you don't believe me, think about that place that you know how to get to, but you're not sure how you tell somebody else to get there, right? Like, how do you get to this place? You're like, I, I could get there, but I don't know if I could tell you how to get there, right? If you did tell them, because you're recreating the habit, you're going to your habit part of your brain. So what does that look like? Um, so what that means then is that we have work to do on both parts of our brain. Remember I said decide? First step is decide. That's the part of your brain that's going to form the habit. That's the part of your brain that's the memory recall. That's the part of your brain that knows where the kitchen is. That's the decision part. That's not enough to start there. Stop there. You can't just decide. That's not enough. You have to then create habits that take you into the kitchen. Or in this, that's probably a bad analogy for what we're talking about, right? But the habit loop is pretty simple, and they talk about this in the book as the Hopkins conception of the Pepsodent habit loop. And Pepsodent played an interesting role in this. What they found with Pepsodent was that people were not brushing their teeth. Believe it or not, when toothpaste was invented, people were not excited about it. They thought it was weird, and they didn't see how it was helping. They weren't selling toothpaste. And you would think now, ooh, I can't imagine living without it, but they weren't. It wasn't until Pepsodent created the buzz. Now I'm here to break some news to you. Did you know that little minty fresh taste you get, that buzz you get when you do the what's it called, the mouthwash or the toothpaste, is it not an active ingredient that cleans your teeth? The buzz is something they discovered as a reward to tell you something just happened. Okay. It's the same reason we color our floated or color our sodas. I'm having a hard time getting some of my words out today. Same reason we color some of our sodas and do things we do is to make you think something more. Like it gives you this reward, like, oh, I like that thing. So it's the same thing happened with the sprays, the sprays they use. Some of them were literally getting rid of bad smells, but it wasn't enough till you smelled the flowers to know that you got a reward. So you got to have a cue, which is the thing that starts the behavior. And then you have the routine you do. The cue for brushing your teeth is in the morning. It's got to be the same. I wake up right after whatever it is that you do. After you go to the bathroom, that's when, or after I get out of the shower. For me, that's when I brush my teeth. Okay. So the cue is I just took my shower. My brain goes, you took a shower, time to brush your teeth. So it's an ongoing cue. Then the routine, and then the reward. In this case, the little buzz in your mouth. Okay. So the cue, the routine, the reward, and then you see that circle. How do we create a new habit? Because right now your cue is it's time to watch TV and the kitchen's right there. By the way, we didn't talk about this, but I think one of the things that happened, why we've gotten so unhealthy is we tore down the wall between the kitchen and the TV room. It's not a small thing to me. I think we probably made our lives harder when we gave such easy access to the kitchen. But here we are. The cue is I'm hungry because I'm tired, because I'm whatever. Here's the cue. I create a routine. Here's the hack. You steal the routine. You keep the same cue, but you steal the routine. You see how in those two pictures, they're identical except for one piece, and that's the routine. So smokers learned this when they found that certain cues and triggers made them want to smoke. So they had to then create a new routine to steal from that cue. And then they did that, and then they had a better reward. And the reward was to say, look how good I feel having not done that or having done that, whatever it might be. So the problem with coercive motivation, I told you, is we do resist. Where the inner teenager does not appreciate that, and it's not sustainable. I'm going to catch up a little bit on a couple of these comments. I love that you guys are talking with each other, sharing some books and some advice. Just looking for any questions that might be here. I don't see any right now, but if you have any, let me know as we go along here. Don't work against your natural processes. Now, here's the other thing. Have you ever seen those images of like a 90-pound woman throwing like a 250-pound guy over her shoulder? And it's because she's learned the art and the skill of using someone's energy against them, right? Not, she didn't lift him and put him over. She just his inertia and the laws of physics to throw her over his shoulder using his own weight. That's what we do against our these things that happen, right? Instead of a forceful resistance. Okay, I'm going to tell you about the stare the cupcake down. Don't like try to like the cupcake, right? We sometimes have to stare it down and say, and in addiction treatment they call it face it, replace it, and connect. And I don't have that here, but what they tell you is don't run from the stimulus, take it on. Don't, not in a tempting way, like put the cigarette to your mouth and go, I don't have to smoke you. Don't tempt it. Don't take it any further than it's already gone, but talk to it. You look at the cupcake and you say, I see you, cupcake. And in my fantasy, you're beautiful. Like I love your texture and the way you go down my throat. And I love how you're, the frosting compared to the rest of the cupcake. It's amazing. Like I have a fantasy. And then I go, you know what, cupcake? This is who you really are. Right? Yes, you do taste delicious, but never quite as delicious as I think you're going to be. Yeah, you taste good. But you know what you also are? You are like 400 calories. Man, I could eat a lot of other stuff for 400 calories or whatever it might be. Like, here's what you really, and you know what? Today, it's worth it. I'm going to do the cupcake, but I'm making a decision based on all the other factors. I personally don't say no to Dr. Pepper anymore. I still don't say no to Dr. Pepper. I don't say no to any of it. I just make a decision. I have to make a decision. If I want this, something else goes. Like it's a same as budgeting. We don't just go buy the car. We buy the car, and then before we do, we say, guess what? Something else has to go, right? I gotta get in order to budget the car, I gotta spend less somewhere else. That's what we do with our eating. We just like, I'll do some of that. I'm personally don't say no to any of the foods that I like. I just decide, how much of it and when is that gonna be good for me, right? So and as we strive to do this, what we become highly motivated by what you want to achieve rather than by what you want to avoid. And the imagery here is you're not going to get very far and do very well if you're looking over your shoulder, right? So looking ahead at what it is that you want and focusing rather than focusing on the negative consequences of bad habits, focusing instead on the positive effect of good habits, creating a vision, a true vision of what it is you're trying to create here, right? Looking at the big picture, not just the present moment. We have to go against the sugar that says, I only care about today. And we have to decide, I care about tomorrow and I care about today too in different ways, right? I care that when I go to bed tonight, I can say to myself, I did it. And I can get those good feelings that come from just that can be immediate with healthy lifestyle, right? And so again, there's not just one way change your health related lifestyle. People do it in very different ways. But in terms of the different types of ways, sometimes they're transformative. For me, it had something to do with, it started when I thought like I was on a certain path. And then my mom had a massive heart attack to early, right? 62. That's too young. And we lost her in that heart attack. We never got to see her again. I woke up that morning and my mom was seemingly fine and we lost her that day. And the doctor, when they pulled us in very insensitively, as we're seeing my mom this way, gave us a lecture on her health. I'm like, timing could be better, doc. But take care of yourselves. But it certainly did weigh on me, and I thought a lot about, I want to be here for my grandkids. I want to feel good in doing so, and I want to give the best, um, best opportunity to load the dice. So that was transformative for me. But I'll tell you what, I didn't instantly become really healthy. It's just been the spark that I over and over again, that kind of thing that helps me to reconnect to my goals. So that's transformative. But then there's also the incremental, which is just the experience after experience, right? That can become helpful. Um, so I hear looking again, catching up on some of the comments. So I'll tell you my sauce, and you can tell me what works. So the secret to losing weight to me was I weigh myself every day, good or bad. Okay. Accountability matters. And I hate it on the bad days, but it's accountability. The second you stop standing on the scale or whatever other measure, I don't want to just focus on weight here, people. I hope it doesn't feel like I'm just doing that. Whatever it might be, if it's your cholesterol intake is your issue, if your issue here is I guess I'm focusing a little bit more on obesity because of the prevalence of that issue and it's related to so many other health problems. But whatever your health related goal is, and by the way, and I think you maybe mentioned it here, is even if you are obese and struggling with obesity, even if you never hadn't changed from obese to not obese, exercise, by the way, still increases your chances and does better. So even if it's not you're not losing weight, just knowing that it improves your health to exercise can be very helpful. So for me, again, it's my spark plug is there of guilt and shame. I acknowledge those things, but continually having a conversation with myself about what it is I want to accomplish, being accountable, um, calorie counting, not excessively in crazy ways. I use an app that helps me. It's just on Samsung's Health that just lets me put in. I can scan a code if I want. I got to where I don't really do that much now because I know how much this bowl because I've weighed it before of certain food is going to be in calories. So I just kind of estimate it. Like I don't have to be crazy diligent about like going to a restaurant and take my scale with me or anything like that, right? But you get a sense of that. I read things. I just stay going, keep growing. I read new books on things, and that's helping me. This time when I lost over 30 pounds, I've been able to keep it off, and I feel good about that. Um, and that's what I just want to keep doing now. It's been the hardest part for me, and I think having support of other people is another key. Finding people who also support your goals and want to help you, and are themselves trying to do that, and creating positive peer pressure can be very helpful. I'm going to throw in a pitch to say that we sometimes you might need a little help, and your EAP can be a part of that. It can be helpful to talk to someone who deals with behavioral issues, mental and emotional issues, and understands habit and can help you address these things and be your cheerleader, your coach, your ask the right questions and help you take a look at that. So if that's something we can help you with, that's certainly something we're happy to do. Thank you for coming and being a part of this discussion today. We could probably go on for I could go on forever and enjoy talking about this, but I appreciate the discussion. I appreciate everybody look at this. When I talk about being there for each other, I love that on the side here, you got all these people recommending books and strategies. I love the split your meal thing. That is awesome. It's also a financial great. If you haven't been reading the comments, you should. Those are great input. And thank you all for being here. Appreciate you. I wish you all the best and all your goals. Thank you very much. Take care.